I'm your host, Matt, and this platform is all about real stories, raw journeys and transformations, both physical and mental. And I'll be welcoming best-in-field professionals and clients over time. Welcome to the FlexFit podcast. Today, I'm delighted to welcome one of the UK's leading osteopaths, James Ellis of Active Healthcare, specialising in strength and conditioning, rehab, and sports performance. So I met James about 6 or 7 years ago when I used to see lots of different physios and osteos. I had a bad back with 2 bulging discs. So I was in lots of pain, and I actually had an operation booked, and no one could really help me. One person said, you need to go and see this guy, James Ellis. He's the miracle man. At that point, I was like, fine. Went to see James, and it was like he had x-ray vision. As I walked towards him and I put my hand out, he already knew what was wrong. Started to tell me as we were walking up the stairs. Long and short of it is, he said, I'm going to give you a 50% chance. Keep your operation booked in 2 weeks. Or you need to stop everything you're doing and come and see me every other day for the next 2 weeks. And we'll see if we can fix you without having an operation. And after 1 or 2 sessions, the pain was still there. And people who have had bulging discs, who have trained all their lives, know that sort of pain. The second you get out of bed and you brush your teeth to the minute you get back into bed, it is horrid. Most days I didn't know whether to call an ambulance, be sick, or cry. And James, after 2 sessions, I thought, it's not working. And then just something happened. It just started to work, and the pain went from level 10 to level 7, from level 7 to level 5, and from level 5 to 0. And then he was my new best friend. And he stopped me having an operation. We did rehab together, and I'm basically the strongest I've ever been, even before seeing him. So that's that. So welcome, James.
Thank you. What an intro.
So what I want to start with is something I've always wondered in my head, because I've seen lots of different physios and osteos. I wouldn't see anyone else now apart from you, but what is the difference between a physio and an osteo?
Biggest question in the world, that one. Not much. And a lot, I think, is the answer. The big problem these days is that you've got 2 different trains of thought, but one of the big things really is that physios these days have a very NHS based, where they've become incredibly hands off. Their profession has reached a point where, in my opinion, these days, unless you go and see a private physio who is of a certain age or a certain type, you really just don't get touched these days. Now, I'm massively into empowering people to rehabilitate, do exercises, but I think there is more to holistic treatment than just that. And the biggest complaint I see from patients these days, especially you see physios on the NHS, and I know their workload is ridiculous, is that they just get a sheet of non-bespoke exercises that just get printed off from them from Physio Tools or another like-minded brand, and that's it. And I just don't think that empowers the patient. I don't think it creates the hands-on touch.
Well, if it was more of a private physio, like you, the equivalent of you, but not a physio.
Again, these days, it is just the profession as a whole for them is moving very much to the non-touching. They just do not believe in the manual therapy approach as much. Now, I've got physios working in my practice, and they're great, but they're the hands-on physios, and they're few and far between these days. And essentially, obviously in our field, you essentially have osteopaths, you have chiropractors, and you have physios. Now, I would love to work under a brand and have supported this brand that actually all osteopaths, chiropractors, and physios should lose their title. We should all work under the same brand, because at the end of the day, when someone comes to see us, you wouldn't have cared if I was a physio, a chiropractor, or an osteopath.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately what a person wants is just to get better. They want to take advice. They want to be led. They want to be consulted. They want to be listened to. And I think really where the future should go, in my opinion, is, and I'm probably going to shout my model here, is that where everyone works under one roof, They work along a single mantra. Sometimes physios are better at surgical rehab than osteopaths. Chiropractors are better at manipulating some areas of the body than osteopaths. We can learn, we can collaborate. Things like MDT meetings, which are the medical discussion meetings where you take a patient you're getting problems with, take the view of a physio, a chiropractor and an osteopath. And I think that's the best approach.
Yeah.
But you've got chiropractors one end, you've got osteopaths somewhere in the middle, and you've got physios here. And physios hate osteopaths and chiropractors is the general trend that we hear. Chiropractors and osteopaths don't like physios. It's nonsense. It doesn't get anywhere. And I think ultimately physio needs to come back into a bit more hands-on. And I think if you look at some good physios and you listen to what they say, they're shouting for it.
Yeah.
But things take time to change.
Okay. No, that's interesting to know, because I've seen some great physios, and osteos and the chiropractor, but actually I did see a chiropractor once and it made me a million times worse. It felt quite good at the time with the big crack and you're like, oh yeah, that feels good. But then when I woke up the next morning, I couldn't get out of bed.
I think really sometimes that could have just simply been a treatment reaction, but there's some great chiropractors out there who work brilliantly. And I think, obviously there are people who sign you up to long treatment programs, and, I could discuss that until the cows come home in terms of my feelings towards it. But, there's good and bad in all professions. And
yeah,
you can never guarantee what response you get when you start mucking around with someone's body.
Yeah. Okay. And what do you think separates osteopathy for sports performance versus general osteopathy?
I think really if I answer that, it's an interesting one, but in terms of osteopathy and sports osteopathy, there is no difference. Osteopathy is osteopathy. It's manual medicine. It's looking at biomechanics, movement, strength, structure, joint integrity, joint mobility. And I think whether I'm working in the pit lane at Le Mans, or whether I'm working in my treatment room in Bourne End, I'm essentially doing the same thing, whether that person be a high-level PGA Tour golfer who was top 10 in the world, or whether I'm dealing with a patient who's a painter decorator from God knows where. It's the same body, it's the same thing, it's the same problems. The problems may be slightly different in terms of what they need to achieve, but ultimately the painter decorator wants to be able to paint the ceiling so we can earn some money, and my racing driver wants to win Le Mans.
So so you go to Le Mans, and what will the racing driver need?
So this is the sports performance work is something that I've done for quite a long period of time, and I think it is a little bit separate from my work as an osteopath. However, it gives me a unique selling point really above other strength and conditioning coaches and sports performance coaches, because whereas you would normally take a sports performance coach on that would just look after your nutrition, your training, mindset, etc., I have a bit of a unique selling point that I can do the whole package, because obviously as an osteopath, I can look after the body as well.
Yeah.
So I think really to answer the question, in terms of sports osteopathy versus osteopathy, there is just no difference at all. It's the same mindset, it's the same approach. I would only say one thing, that the pressures are slightly higher in sports osteopathy, because generally, I'll give you a great example. I was looking after a racing driver, young Swiss girl, Lena, and she won the Michelin Le Mans Cup at Le Mans, but she stupidly took the little trike down to the pit lane from where her car was being worked on, and helmet fell on the floor. We're talking 10 minutes before the race here.
Yeah.
Okay. So 10 minutes before the qualifying, the day before the race. Caught her trike, spun her over, she broke her ankle.
Shit.
Right. So get called up to the pits, into the pits, and I've got to work out, A, is she safe to drive at 200 miles an hour around Le Mans? Okay. B, and probably more importantly, are we going to be able to allow her to perform? So we strapped it, we stabilized it. She said she was comfortable. She went and completed. Next day with a fractured ankle, with a good bit of osteopathy, reduction inflammation, and some very clever strapping with some toothpicks and everything else that I could find around Le Mans. We managed to actually stabilize the ankle for her to week.
Sweet. Wow. She won as well.
Yeah, so she won. So, and to get a female winner of the Michelin Le Mans Cup, which is one of the second drives at Le Mans with a broken ankle, is was absolutely superb. So I would say the pressures there were slightly different. It was a bit like treating your prolapse disc with how stressed you were. That's the best way I can describe it.
So that must take you out of your clinic for quite a while.
I've had different jobs over the years, so I've been very fortunate, and there's some things really which, they say it's what you know. I disagree with this. It's who you know. There's some great sports performance coaches that just don't get the breaks that I've managed to get over the years. And I've had some clients, some of which I'm allowed to mention, some of which I can't. And, they get you some serious notoriety. I've been fortunate enough to work in motor racing, cricket, rugby, international sprinting, long distance running. I think the hardest job that I took on probably within my career of the last 25, 26 years was working on the PGA Tour with a golfer. He came to me, he was 79 in the world, and he needed to get into the top 10 in the world and break into the PGA Tour. We achieved it within the year that we set, which was absolutely fantastic. Complete mindset change from him. He was a gentleman who's an amazing golfer, never really done any training before, but he was unable to keep his consistency of his performance up because his body composition was wrong. Body just couldn't handle that level of competition. But the big issue I had here was that I think it kept me in the States for 25 weeks of the year.
How would you assess someone's movement or imbalances so quickly if someone came in? What would you look for?
So it's a weird one, this, and I see it with the team that have worked with me now for quite a long period of time. It's just pattern recognition. You've got to remember that when you work in a really busy clinic, we see up to 300 patients a week through the clinic. You see a pattern recognition that is the same almost all the time. The way people walk, the way they move, you can tell a knee problem coming up the stairs. You can check a dynamic valgus by the way the person moves, the way they're holding themselves. I've got a slightly interesting way of doing it. It's not taught this, but over the years, I tend to break the body down into three main areas. And I look at the movement, structure and stability within three zones. And if you can understand that we take the belly button, this is your pelvic zone, which if out or not working properly will affect how your hips, your low back move, your knee, your ankles, which is things like dynamic valgus. The second zone is your core stability zone, which is very hot and popular, but actually increasingly, I think, becoming quite irrelevant.
Right.
Okay. Because I think that getting off the toilet, getting out of the car, most people's cores are significantly stronger than we gave credit to. And I've never really found, there are obviously people who've had sustained bed rest or serious problems that have weak core stability. But I would say that 9 times out of 10, if I've got someone with low back pain, I'm looking at pelvic stability as an issue, not core stability. And actually, one of the things that I find a really big problem with is core stability overload. Someone goes to see a consultant, they'll tell their person to go and do Pilates. Their core stability will get even stronger and their pelvic stability will get even weaker, and the body hates disparity. So the third area is the scapular stability, very important with shoulder problems, neck problems, which is how your shoulder blade moves, the stability between the front chain and the back chain. So I look at those the moment I check a patient, and I think 26 years doing the job, I can scan whoever. For example, I scanned this lovely lad when I walked in today. And you just can't do it. It's a habit. I walk around Sainsbury's and I walk around airports, and I'm a complete nightmare with it.
You've done it to me as I've
Yeah.
You'll know before I even open my mouth.
Doesn't mean I'm always right, but generally it gives you a guide as to where we're going.
Why do you think so many fit people suffer from chronic injuries and tightness when there's, but like me, I'm training 5 times a week. I know I'm fit, but I suppose with training that many times for so long, you're going to get, it comes with training, right?
Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting one, an answer to this, but the majority of people that I would say that we probably see more fit people within the clinic than we see unfit people. And depends what you describe as fit and unfit. I suppose you're only fit for your environment or what you want to do. But I think what people need to understand is that one of the biggest problems that I come across as a sports performance coach, whether I'm working with a professional athlete, an amateur athlete, or just trying to help someone in the clinic, if they're sporty, they overtrain. And they do not understand the essence of recovery.
Right.
Right? You do not build muscle in a gym. You damage it. You stimulate it. You do not burn fat in a gym sweating your ass off. You essentially stimulate that response. It's when you recover that the magic happens. And I think really the problem comes unless that person understands that overtraining is a real problem.
Yeah.
You are never going to get a result and you will get injuries.
Yeah.
And, you know, hormones in our body dictate everything that happens.
Yeah.
And you put your body under stress and you're going to end up with problems. I think also, you know, we see different problems with different groups of people. So I tend to see the repetitive type injuries in the people that do a lot of exercise. I tend to see what I would call more of the muscular imbalance related issues with people who are not your gym goer, don't do exercise, don't do very much activity. So, you know, problems are the same. And I think what we need to understand is that people pick up injuries no matter what we do. If you were actually to take a look at one joint in the body and realize, walking down the stairs, what pressures go through that joint, range of motion, it's a wonderment really that we're not broken more than we actually are.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that because I tell all my clients as well the importance of sleep, rest, and recovery.
Yeah,
and trying to get 7 or 8 hours, and instead of staying up till 11 p.m, try and get to bed till 9:30. You know, brush your teeth, get into bed. So you can just flick the telly off when you fall asleep, instead of breaking it. It's so important. But and I've only learned that in the last 5.
It's the hardest thing to learn because people feel it's a cop out. You know what's the saying that I'll sleep when I die. No, you won't. Okay. If you don't sleep, you will die and you will have a bad life in terms of health.
Yeah.
You know, we now know what sleep gives us. And one of the things that one of the biggest priorities, I would say beyond building a training program and a diet program for a specific athlete, if I'm working with a professional athlete, the first thing that I will engage with them is making sure they understand recovery. Now, we're not talking about cold baths and infrared saunas and things like this because you're going to the next level here. I'm talking about simple patterns of sleep, recovery, days off, making people understand that, for example, a day off is still training. Okay, that's the bit that I try and say to people. So your heavy weights program on a Tuesday is supported by your rest on the Wednesday. If you don't rest on the Wednesday, then you may as well not bother going to the gym on Tuesday.
Yeah.
All right. Now, don't get me wrong. Building up to competitions, people do push it. They can work perhaps 5 days a week. You continue to do 7 days a week worth of training for too long, and your body's going to start letting you know. And how it's going to do it is in terms of chronic fatigue or injury, in my opinion.
Yeah. And you mentioned cold water therapy there, which as you probably know, I'm an advocate of that. I do it religiously every day.
Yeah.
I'm quite fortunate that I do hot as well. So very hot, very cold.
Yeah.
Like 50-degree heat and then 3-degree water.
Yeah.
What's your take on cold water therapy?
Massive fan.
Yeah.
Works very well. Have some slight opinions on some of the regulation that's been put into it in terms of some of the most notable people that say it's got to be done at X certain time for this amount of time. I don't buy into it. I've got to say I've looked at some of the research, certainly some of the research that's come out in the last couple of years. Cold water therapy, without a shadow of a doubt, has a significant effect on your nervous system and it reduces your cortisol. Whether you need to do that first thing in the morning or last thing at night, I think it makes very little difference.
Yeah, it's horses for courses.
It
can make your day a lot better, but you can make your sleep a lot better as well.
I do. And I switch to cold water bathing in the evening.
Yeah.
Try it out and it has a much better effect on me. Does that mean that's the same for the next person? I don't know. I think one of the interesting things was one of the studies that's been done recently about the gasp reflex.
Right.
So what they did was they analysed the neurological responses of a set group of people to cold water submersion. Rather than looking at temperature and time, what they looked at was the actual position of what they were doing, and they took 3 groups. One group fully submerged, the other group submerged only down to their waists, and the third group just stuck their head, covering their ears, into the same cold water. the responses were identical for the face one with the full body submersion.
Right.
So this gasp reflex around here, I think that even sticking your face into a basin of cold water has beneficial effects.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love what cold water does for me. I think
I think there's an element of habitual tendency to it as well, because if you like routine.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you said about the time you would be in it, but then it comes down to what the temperature is, because if it really is, 3 degrees ish, you don't want to be in there for too long. You're just going to get hypothermia.
No.
And you're just going to get the same effect.
And
if you're in there for 6 minutes, if you're there for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just going to take you a shitload longer to warm up.
Yeah. And get any benefit. In fact, you could be wasting more energy actually trying to warm up than you are actually getting benefits.
Yeah. How helpful is it, James, when a client already has a training plan that's been tailored to their body, especially if they've had previous injuries or movement limitations?
Yeah, this is if we get let's just say we have a patient that comes in with a back problem or a shoulder problem. If they're working and engaged with someone that they've already got a relationship with, the benefit for us is huge. Okay, so if someone's working with someone like yourself, they come and see us. It is so easy for us to engage with their online coach, someone like yourself, and get them to switch training towards a rehab side. And one of the biggest problems that we have is this mindset change of making people understand that 90% of problems that we come across with, or actually it's even bigger. So if you take my clinic, on a weekly basis, 99.9% of people that come to my clinic have not had trauma. That means that they haven't had a car accident, they haven't fallen over, they actually haven't damaged their back lifting a stone in the garden. So why are they with me? Well, they're with me because something in their body has gone wrong, which is mainly related to movement patterns or stability or strength. Now, an online training coach won't be looking at a injury issue unless it's been already predisposed to them, which means they're just trying to get them fit, they're trying to make them change their body composition, they're trying to train for an event or a purpose. Now the fact is that we can engage with that relationship, which we do regularly, then the results that we can get are so much faster, because you give clients, if they come to see me or patients, exercises within the clinic, the chances of them doing it are 1 in 2.
Right.
You engage their online training coach, or speak to someone like you. So I call you up and I say, look, so-and-so's got a problem here. This is my diagnosis. Can we work collaboratively? Can you slide this type of training into the program that they're already currently doing? The results that we get are rapid.
Yeah.
Okay.
It makes things so much easier.
It makes things so much easier. Now, this is where I get bugbeared, is that I can chase some people's coaches or PTs, etc. I don't hear back from them. Now, that's not that investment in people. And we go that mile to make contact. I love the ones that call me and say, you're working with my client. What do I need to do to help them? Because that collaborative approach for us is dynamite.
Yeah.
And of course, it works reciprocally, because we get patients lying on our couch all the time saying, do you know a good PT? I don't want to come to Bourne End, see your guys, etc. We can hand people out. I know people in Oxford all the way over towards Surrey that have engaged with me with their own clients. And, I love this back, but most PTs, online coaches, chiropractors, physios, osteopaths, they don't get into their profession because they want to make money. They get into it because they love working with people and getting results.
Correct.
And that, to me, is, you can tell the good ones from the bad ones on that. But that is a massive help for us from a treatment point of view.
That's what I tell all my clients. Your success is my success.
Exactly.
I want to see that change.
Yeah. Our biggest thing in the practice is we tell a patient when they come and see us, our job is to discharge you as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
All right. Because that's good for us.
That's the beauty of being an online coach. I'm coaching people in Australia, America, Canada, Dubai, Europe, South Africa.
Yeah.
They got their structured training plan. They got their macros, the calories to hit. It's all there. Speak to me every day. Good. All right. So you wrote an article for Sports and Exercise Journal called the Hidden Costs of CrossFit, which caused some controversy. So what inspired you to write it?
So I sound like I hate CrossFit here, and I don't at all, but I think the big problem I have is understanding energy systems and understanding injuries. And I think that the position that I'm in, I'm very fortunate to do the job that I do. I see the sharp end of both of those areas. And I did fall foul, I think, a bit of a cult of CrossFit on this one, because it did upset a few people. But the key thing about my issue with CrossFit is the type of training and the understanding of the training principles. So if you see it from my perspective, I get patients that are coming into my practice on a almost daily, weekly basis with the same injuries or new injuries all the time. And the really big problem that I was experiencing is that it costs a lot of money to join a box, which means they lose their gym, okay, because they're not going to pay twice. These workout of the days, these short, sharp workouts, often contain elements that don't please me, in terms of the fact that things like deadlifts and squats, and snatch are power moves. They are strength moves. They are not designed for repetitive movement. You are not meant to do 100 deadlifts tired with fatigue and expect your back not to blow out on you. And, we have to respect the movements and exercises that we do. We've also got to understand that what is fitness? Okay. Now this is a bit of a contentious one, but fitness is only what you need it to be. So if I was training, for example, a bodybuilder, that is going to be very different than training a high rocks athlete. Okay. And you have to understand that to be a good body composition for the sport that you want to do, or to be fit for the sport that you want to do, strong enough, the right size and shape, you have got to adapt your training to that level. Now, it means that you have to understand that you cannot work your aerobic system, your lactate system, your muscular endurance system, and your strength system all in one go.
Yeah.
All right. And anybody that tells me that you can, yes, you can. And I have no problems with people going to boxes, doing CrossFit, but don't do 2 WODs a day, morning and evening, 7 days a week, and not expect your body to break down. Okay.
Asking for trouble.
And the damage it has on your hormones, etc. And I got so sick and tired of people coming in and essentially asking me questions consistently why they were constantly broken. And what I really found quite interesting was luring them away. So I think on 4 occasions now, free of charge, I have had to take people under my wing, put them on a strength and conditioning program that was more strength based to regain stability, to then let them go back to the box to do a couple of WODs. And I think really this is the issue. You've got to try and ply people away from the short burst training. I think high rocks is falling into this. It's not quite as bad, and it's definitely, in my opinion, not quite so culty. But certainly in my practice, I would say that, especially with COVID, it was really bad. And what we were doing, we were getting all the boxes that were shut down. We had people buying equipment and training online at home in their garage with their CrossFit coaches, doing online WODs. Basically, it kept me in business during lockdown.
Right. Because I've got lots of female clients at, say, 40 upwards that come to see me. They look fit from the chest up, so good jawline, nice thin neck, nice trimmed shoulders, but then they've got these little pop out bellies. And it's the same question, Matt, I eat really well. Well, we don't really know what they're eating, but let's assume they are. And I train 5-6 days a week. I'm doing my CrossFit, I'm doing my high rocks, battle ropes, tires. And I say to them, the reason why is you're causing your body so much stress of 40 years plus, when perimenopause is only round the corner if it's not kicked in already. The more you stress your body like that, the more your cortisol levels increase, and that cortisol will just sit in your stomach and create that pop-out effect.
Yeah.
And as soon as they start weight training properly and have a proper macronutrient target to have every day out of the 3 macros, that just goes within about 4 or 5 weeks.
What you see with these CrossFitters is this stress on the body. And, you know, if you were to go and train every single system, you're going to start getting muscle breakdown rather than fat loss.
Yeah.
Because your body's hormone system is going to be switched in a way that it is in fight or flight mode. Okay. And muscle loss cumulatively over months with that type of training, one thing's going to happen. Someone's going to get banged.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with that. You mentioned the risks of taxing multiple energy systems.
Yeah.
So can you break that down for people who might not understand that?
So if I was to go and do a muscular workout in the gym, and I was to lift some weights and nourish my body afterwards, I would essentially be working my muscular system, which essentially is working the skeletal system, putting it under stress with the aim of either building muscle or building strength. Big difference here. And it's something that a lot of people, even doctors that I've spoken to and had chats with, don't seem to understand. There's a difference between strength and size.
Correct.
Okay. We can have something that is X big and something that is that big, and they can actually produce the same amount of force depending on the neurological activity going on it. And we adapt this with rep ranges, for example. Often something that your online coach will do, you don't need to worry about unless you're interested in it. But if we're working that system, we would be working body composition, stability, strength, hypertrophy. That is a very different system to running a marathon.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in sports performance terms, we call it the rep range continuum. So if you were to put a power lifter or, for example, the world's strongest man at one end, which would be a 1 max lift or very low lifts, and then we put a marathon runner like Mo Farah at the other end, which would be 10,000 reps, which is a running, you've got an incredibly different rep range.
Yeah.
Now, the point is this would be aerobic. In the middle would be muscular, lactate, anaerobic. And then you have what you classify as your muscular system. The problem you have is that all three components relate. So, for example, Mo Farah still needs muscular strength to produce his gait and stride to make him run fast over a long distance. He doesn't need to look like the bodybuilder.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And what the bodybuilder needs to understand is that you are absolutely fantastic if you're the size of a house and you look great in winning competitions, but it's not great if you're going to keel over and have a heart attack. You don't do any cardiovascular training.
Yeah.
Now, what the ideal thing to do is to be able to train different systems. And I could go into the science of those systems, but I think we confuse people. But a little bit of everything is going to be much better than the same thing or trying to mix everything together.
Yeah.
And what I love doing with my clients who are not what I would call professional athletes in terms of they just want general fitness to improve their overall health, try and put them somewhere in the middle where they can decide to go and run a marathon, or they can decide to get a bit bigger or a bit stronger, and also teach them the fundamentals of how they train themselves. And that's one of the most important things, because I believe that if you can understand your body, understand how to train it both cardiovascularly, understand lactate training and the benefits it has for your heart, which are short burst training intervals that can have as much cardiovascular response as running a 10-kilometer race.
Yeah.
And we're talking about 10-second bursts on a assault bike, the equivalent of running a 10K running race.
Yeah.
That's insane, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think really my big problem with CrossFit is this continuous training of all the energy systems without much thought.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. I'm gonna move the conversation on now to a buzzword that I have a lot of interest in. I know that you've perked up in it, which is peptides, which is the buzzword in high level performance circles at the moment. It's massive in the States, probably more because the rules and regulations are more relaxed there than here. But what's your take on peptides?
It's a very interesting area. Everyone talks of it. The use of peptides has been quite a new area. I don't think this is the case at all. I think peptides have been knocking around for a very long time.
Yeah.
I've heard rumours recently that there are certain athletes from the kind of late 80s, 90s that were mucking around with peptides in those days, which I find really interesting. I think one of the things to understand is what peptides are, and also understanding something called methylation. And, I don't want to get too technical, but I think it's quite an interesting area. I think when you talk about the general standard World Anti-Doping Agency has got a real problem here, because how do you ban something that is a natural amino acid? Are they going to start banning BCAAs? Because essentially a peptide is nothing more than a group of amino acids that works through the methylation process of the body. And I'll come to methylation in a moment, but the effect that they can have on the body and work with the body rather than on the body, I find quite interesting. There's lots of research going on, lots of research being allegedly shut down, which I find quite interesting, because it's very hard to patent something that naturally occurs.
So that's probably half the problem.
And it's very hard to shut. If you can't patent something that naturally occurs, you can mimic it, I suppose. But I think really when we look at Ozempic, which is now one of the big drugs, which I'm majorly not a fan of.
Yes.
Okay. And you look at what peptides could offer those people with perhaps significantly better body compositional gains that go way beyond one use of the peptide, I think I'm a massive fan. So
do you think that's to do with the pharmaceutical companies not being able to monetize off it, as opposed to something like Ozempic and all of the drugs that come under that banner where it's just they're earning a fortune?
It's
coming out a penny out of peptides.
It sounds ridiculously cynical, but yeah, I think that there is some evidence and some truth in it. There's a lot of negativity about peptides.
Do you think that's because for peptides to be used, it needs to be injected with an insulin needle? And as soon as you start talking and go down that angle, people think, oh, bodybuilder and injections and steroids and must be bad. That can't be good for you, and it's not on the shelves, so I wouldn't touch it. Do you think there's an element of that?
I think there's a bit of scaremongering about it. I think that if you were to look at the back of an aspirin or paracetamol or ibuprofen packet, you'd see there are dangers with those drugs. Are we talking about a drug here, or are we talking about a mimicking peptide?
Yeah.
Is this any different to taking a supplement to try and improve your vitamin D or your vitamin Bs? Now, look, my knowledge on peptides, there's people who know a lot more than me about this. There seems to be more peptides being discussed.
There's loads. There's an alphabet.
There's an alphabet. I have to look after athletes that perform internationally that had to follow WADA rules. So I am regularly on the WADA website. I've got my athletes wanting to take peptides for obvious reasons, and I have to look for a list. And if it appears on the list, it's banned. Now, what's really interesting about this list is how it's changed. So the list now has a peptide list or mimicking hormone list. Yet not all peptides work on hormones. Okay. But this is the interesting thing for me, is that the new WADA list as of January 2024 now has what we call an SO section. Now this SO section means that it lists BP57 as the example, 157 as the example, but it indicates that any peptide that is under what it goes clinical trial or veterinary use or whatever the terms that they use now is also banned. Yeah, it doesn't actually list what it is, which means they seem to be classifying all peptides into this.
There will be. The two peptides I've used in the past, the BPC 157s, a body protection compound 157, and TB 500, known as the Wolverine stack, because you touched up on why some of these peptides are banned, but for me, they don't enhance performance. You ain't going to go and lift suddenly 100 kilos when you were doing 20 kilos yesterday, or aesthetically, it's not going to change any type of your body composition. What it does is rapidly increases helping any injuries that have occurred. You can locally inject into, and it will speed up the healing process, which is why I think it's weird that it's getting banned from these sports because you're not going to go and run faster and lift heavier. It's just going to help people that are training to lift like that or run like that or whatever the case may be to heal quicker.
I think, again, my knowledge on peptides is reasonable in terms of what I've read, but I am not the expert on it. And there are other people that know way more than me. But from my knowledge, one of the big problems with peptides is the fact that there are so many therapeutic benefits. For example, the Wolverine stat that you're talking about there, the 1500 is essentially an anti-inflammatory, it deals with chronic inflammation within the body, which is going to be ridiculously healthy for anybody, regardless of training. We're talking about systemic inflammation, not just local inflammation at the site.
I was looking into it for people with Crohn's.
Yes. Okay. And there are so many therapeutic benefits of peptides for things like Crohn's disease, chronic IBS symptoms, before we even start looking at the effects that we can have on neurological conditions, and personality issues such as ADHD and things like this. There are so many benefits. Okay. Now, the BPC 157, I think, is one of the most interesting ones because obviously it's quite well known. It's known to be a healing agent. Okay. I think that certain buzzwords can appear, and I think there's a lot of hype around peptides. One of the big concerns, and I'll probably get onto this now, is this understanding or belief system that peptides cause cancer. Okay, so if we discuss this is quite an important one, because this is the thing that if you go around in circles and you speak to a medical person, they will blindly tell you that peptides cause you cancer. And I kind of go, well, explain that to me. Why? Because this is a naturally occurring substance within the body. Okay. All you're doing is enhancing it or mimicking it or etc. But one of the big things is the angiogenic effect of certainly BPC 157, which means that it will stimulate blood supply. Someone has therefore said, because it stimulates blood supply, it is therefore dangerous if you have a metastasis or cancer within your system, and it is going to cause you to increase your cancer or get blood growth to your cancer. And I just haven't really read the evidence on this that says that this is the case at all.
Right.
A lot of this, though, is quite scaremongery.
Yeah.
Okay. You and I have touched on the differences of attitude between certainly America and Europe. I think is probably the better way, certainly the UK. My time working in America that I've been quite shocked about is if any of my athletes are injured and we consult an orthopedic surgeon, they will give us a diagnosis, MRI scan, give us a consultation, give us an opinion. They will put that person on natural, your normal anti-inflammatory and pain-killing medication, yes, but what they will also go to is the peptide.
Really?
Now, this is the difference, I think, with medicine in America, hype in America, and how things move. Whereas the cautiousness of the UK, we restrict everything until we're probably 10 years too late.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I had an issue with an athlete who had a wrist injury. It was quite a nasty wrist injury. And we had an MRI scan, and I was absolutely shocked that my client was recommended BPC 157 alongside the standard splint recovery anti-inflammatory use. And in my opinion, knowing that injury, having scanned it myself with an ultrasound and seeing the MRI scan, that injury got better twice as quickly using BPC 157 than it would have done.
Did it?
Okay.
Really?
Now, so am I an oracle on peptides? Absolutely not. Okay. There are people, you talk to some of your peptide people that I've spoken to, they can blind you with science. They can give you a concoction. I think for me though, and this is very much a personal opinion, I think where peptides are going to be used in a perhaps safer and better way is microdosing. Okay. And this is where you take, for example, a combination of 12 peptides that your functional medicine practitioner believes are going to be very good for you because of your presenting condition. rather than using a high dose in one of those peptides, you microdose by using a small amount of multiple peptides, and essentially giving you what would be a combination peptide approach, I think is going to be better than using independence. And just a little one, the interesting thing for me is that, again, the hype and buzzwords that the Americans love that the Brits don't. You start calling things Wolverine stacks, the Americans are going to love it, the Brits are going to shy away from it.
Yeah, if it's come from America.
Yeah, but that's my point. And the problem is that, you know, and I think really regulation is another key thing here.
It's crap, yeah.
Well, it is.
It's the same with hormone testosterone replacement therapy for men.
I do. Yeah, but again, let's think about this. I've got guys coming in to see me who are in their late 20s, who feel a bit sluggish and perhaps are breaking up with their girlfriend that are on TRT. And I'm like, what? And they've signed up to, they've gone onto a website, which I won't name. There's a couple out there where they've had some relatively speculative testosterone testing done.
Blood tests.
Yes. All right. And suddenly you're taking TRT. And I'm thinking, this is absolutely bonkers. So where is this regulation? You know, where you're absolutely, but peptides are not allowed, but it's quite comfortable. It's okay for me to go on a website, and within 40 hours, I'm on Ozempic testosterone replacement therapy, even though I've not consulted a medical practitioner at all. How is that regulation? And I think that the problem is that regulation is too strict in some areas and not flexible enough. And I think in other areas, it's just completely gone bonkers.
So the testosterone subject for men here, I think, is quite a big thing, because I've looked into it a lot. Mm-hmm. And we talk about America being 10 years in advance with peptides and hormones, because you can go to Florida and Miami and parts of Texas where they've got these amazing men's hormone clinics now, like these state-of-the-art. Only, you know, they're small, but they're just brilliant. And you can go in there, and their rules and regulations mean that they can prescribe you testosterone, and you can microdose it with different testosterone esters, so like the half-lives, whether it's 7 days, 14 days. Whereas here, if you went to an NHS doctor, they've probably spent 15 minutes and 4 years on hormones, but they're also a bit hand-tied, because they will inject you with the only ester that you're allowed to take here, which is called testosterone decanate, and they'll give you 1,000 milligrams, which is a huge amount. So you're basically going to go up there, and they basically said you just basically come back every 6 months, and we're going to keep topping you up. So then you got to think, well, what's going to happen in 10 years if you're not here and I move areas, or how can I do this at home? The answer is you can't, unless you buy it on the black market, and you learn how to microdose it, and do it yourself. Whereas if you in the States, they tell you this is how you get it, we'll prescribe it, and you can microdose it and self-administer it at home. It's just so different over here with the laws and regulations, because it is linked to bodybuilding and that sort of
the black market culture.
Just that thinking of, you can't do testosterone, you'll be a volleyball.
I think that's unfortunately where peptides is currently at the moment. It's in that zone. Yeah. All right. I'm a bit of I've got a couple of things on this testosterone. I have a lot of my patients that shouldn't be on testosterone, and that are.
How do you know they shouldn't?
Well, because I don't believe.
Have you seen their blood?
Yeah, I have. And I think that it's dubious that they should actually be taking testosterone. So I don't think it was low enough to need it. I think that.
But then there's low enough, but what are the symptoms?
Yeah. And the problem is, that's the bit that worries me, is that
they get out of bed, sex drive, just stuff like that.
And this is the issue. I just don't think their symptoms were there for it. Now my issue is that if we look at a methylation process, which is how we break down food, how we, what we do in our body, and how we produce certain enzymatic processes, the first port of call for anybody who is struggling with that should be looking at what we can do to produce as much natural production as possible. So I'd be looking at sleep, I'd be looking at food, I'd be looking at protein, I'd be looking at stress, I'd be looking at training. Okay, so that's your first port call, because there is no doubt that producing natural is going to be better than unnatural. Okay, so number two,
especially in your 20s.
let's zip away from men for 1 second, talk about women, and I'll talk to you about the problem that I have with HRT. Okay, now one of the big problems I have in the UK with HRT is that if you think that women have a number of hormones that during perimenopause, leading up to menopause, will change quite frantically, leaving some women in a really difficult situation, both metabolically, psychologically as well. And the one thing that we do is we give them the local, you go to your doctor, you say you're struggling with, and they'll offer you HRT, and they'll slap a patch on you. Now that patch will contain a whole load of hormones that you may need and a whole load of hormones that you don't need. Therefore,
not necessarily, not if it's an estrogen gel.
Well, it is, but the problem is 9 times out of 10 they give you patches. It's not bespoke. And this is my problem with it, is that we are not looking at bespokeness in hormones. So if we were looking, I want to do a blood test, I want to work out what that woman is deficient in, which might be different from 6 months later. Okay. I want that female to be as balanced as humanly possible. I would also like them, secondly, to have to try and do everything we can to improve their natural ability to produce hormones. Okay. Are we behind in terms of looking at men's health and testosterone going back to men? Absolutely hugely. Is there enough information out there in terms of, NHS checking? It's not there. Even in the private market, it's, you go and see a private endocrinologist. I still don't think you're going to get what you're describing in the States.
Maybe not, but for any of my clients that come on, the first thing I ask them to do for the sake of 150 quid is to get a private
testosterone test.
Well, everything.
Yes.
Hormones.
Most everything.
Red blood cells, white blood cells, thyroid, liver, a whole panel for 150 quid, because we can learn a lot from that.
I'm a massive fan of the Dutch hormone test, and
that's brilliant.
And this, looking at your cortisol, looking at certain hormones, gives you such accuracy at different points of the day. It's what's happening with people.
Yeah.
And we understand cortisol to be the master hormone. You control cortisol, you will improve your overall hormonal health. Simple as that. How you get there with people, there's one, you could see two similar tests and see two different answers in terms of how that person does.
Yeah. Just going back to what you were saying before, because I'm not sure I agree with that completely, in terms of a lot of the female clients I have come on board, certainly at 35, 40 upwards, get blood tests. Mm-hmm. And you get it, with 6 or 7 days after your cycle, and that will give some idea of where their estrogen level is. Mm-hmm. Because they're entering perimenopause or menopause. If it's tanked, it will be extremely low.
And I'm massively in agreement with that. The only problem I have is that when you have a GP that's giving a patch which contains more than just one, they're using these multi-patches now, which essentially blanket hormones.
Sort of like progesterone, testosterone.
And if you've got a woman who is low in estrogen and high in progesterone, and you want gunning more progesterone into that system, you are going to get a significant abnormality here. And I think that, I could be on the subject for 10 years, which is a dangerous one, but, let's talk about another interesting hormone here that we can look at, thyroid disease. All right. What I find so interesting about thyroid disease, if you look at the medication for thyroid disease, whether you are hypo, underactive, or hyper, it's the same medication.
Right.
Right. It's thyroxine. Now, what really fascinates me is that we start getting symptoms of thyroid disease. We go to the doctor, our TSH levels look slightly out. And instead of looking at the methylation process of what we're doing and why we're not breaking down our stored thyroid and converting it, which is normally a genetic breakdown or a methylation failure, which comes down to food, all right, lifestyle. What we do is we start putting people on thyroxine. Now, the problem with thyroxine is that it kills the thyroid off. So the thyroid is doing nothing wrong, yet we're feeding it thyroxine and killing it, which means that we're then spending a lifetime having to constantly adapt our dosage of thyroid or thyroxine. Yeah. And I just think that there is a different type of medicine that needs to take place, in my opinion. I think we need to look at preventative medicine. We need to be doing blood tests at age of 28, 30 for everybody, where we have the calculations and the algorithms that will be able to predict heart disease, stroke risk, etc. We can make changes. We can let people know. We can do genetic testing. For example, these days you can get genetic testing for £250, okay, which will essentially give someone like myself and you a complete breakdown of your genetic makeup and all of your breakages, which means that we can predict that you are going to be riboflavin deficient, and it takes the complete guesswork out of your supplementation. No ambiguity. It's not, are my supplements working for me? It is, these are the supplements that I need to take for my genetic makeup.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to give you some quick snapshot questions. So, worst exercise you've seen done in a gym?
Oh my God, where do I start? So for me...
Well, what is the worst exercise something could possibly do?
Lat pull down behind neck.
I'd agree with that.
Utterly the most stupid exercise known to humankind. It makes me cry just watching it in the gym. And I have been known to go up to people in the gym and just tell them not to do it.
Yeah, I've done that too.
I think if I had...
Would you agree with the shoulder press behind the neck? Same
thing. I'm not a fan at all. I think it's just utterly stupid. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think the other one for me, if I had an Allen key, I would dismantle every Smith's press in the whole of the UK.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely hate them. Don't like them. Hate the noise they made. Don't like seeing people on them.
Why is that?
Because they don't make any sense to me. A Smith's
press
press
means you can press more weight.
It means that you exceed your ability, which is awfully stupid. You don't have any proprioceptive control. It prevents your body from moving naturally. I've had more people do their low backs and shoulders. Smith's press.
I was taught my tech on the Smith.
Yeah, I'm massively not a fan. I know there's a lot of bolts and screws on there, but I'll tell you what, give me an Allen key and I'll get started now. Smith's press, thanks very much. Good night.
Most underrated movement?
Press up. I think I love a press up, big movement, core activity, absolutely fantastic. I think actually, let's go a bit further. I think if we talked about a Bulgarian squat, even without body weight, foot back on a bench, body moving backwards, what an exercise. You've got core exercise, your upper body control, you're moving a unilateral lever, which means you're moving one side, but making both sides work differently. You've got a stretch element through the rear leg, and you've got that balance control. You don't need to lift heavy weights, so the injury prevalence is very low. You could get someone doing that in the
exercise everyone loves to hate.
Yeah, I'm a massive fan of that.
My clients are watching that.
Yeah, and I think
I make them all do Bulgarian.
Yeah, I think for me as well, I'm a bit of a weird one on this one, but I love a deadlift, and a lot of people don't like a deadlift, but I have surgeons that call me up and go, "How on earth have you managed to get this patient better who had a prolapsed disc?" And I said, "Well, I got them deadlifting and back extending." And he goes, "Well, that's what I tell them not to do." And I said, "Well, that's what they need to do." Now, just think about the logic of this. We think about our core. You've got your core system, you've got all your muscles, you've got your transversus abdominis, your obliques, your rectus abdominis. But we forget about the back muscles, these muscles that sit down the back, the erector spinae group, and we forget about the psoas muscles that sit on the inside of the spine. Now, these are what we look at, or I look at on an MRI scan when someone comes to see me with chronic low back pain. Now, what's the first thing someone does when they injure their back? They don't bend. They don't want to bend. So they crouch down and they squat like this to pick things up, which means that they don't work against gravity. Now, one of the most important muscle groups within your erector spinae that sits right close to the spine is a muscle group called multifidus. Now, if you want to know it's weak, shave. All right? Okay? That slight bend when you're shaving or you're brushing your teeth, if your back aches in that position, then you've got a weakness within that muscle. And I can tell you now that if you want to get a chronic back better, get that patient deadlifting. Now, when I say the word deadlifting, people think that I'm talking about deadlifting 60 kg. No, I'm talking about a simple movement mechanism of understanding that bending from the waist with a bent knee is going to put your discs under the appropriate pressure, which is going to make you stronger. It's going to put you at an angle where you're going to work your erector spinae muscles, which is the most chronically weak area with people sitting at desks. Okay. And you can deadlift with a stick and be just as effective for your back. I'm talking about a broom handle, just as effective for your back as you would be at 50 to 60 kg if you do it slowly, repetitively, and consistently. So I'm a deadlift man. I know you're not.
We will talk about that
Yeah.
another time. Okay. One thing most people should do more of every day.
Move.
I thought you'd say that. Last one. Best way to improve posture at a desk.
Interesting, this one. Actually, yeah, it's interesting. I used to be an ergonome. So an ergonome is someone who's qualified in, I used to be paid to go into companies to, for example, I did some work from a very big confectionery company in Slough, who should remain unnamed, but they got sued for someone having back pain, and they called a company that I work for to have a look at everything from the supply line all the way through to the office. And I was always taught as an ergonome that the keyboard needs to be close to you and the mouse needs to be close to you and you need to be sitting upright. I don't think that's right. Get your workplace posture set up. COVID killed us for this, because we had people working on the edge of desks with these strollers on mouses. Get yourself a decent mouse, get yourself a decent keyboard, and if your company will pay for it or you're willing to do it, get yourself something you can dock your laptop into, which has got a proper screen at the right height. Number 2, get your keyboard and get your mouse away from you, so your elbows are at rest on the table. The moment your elbows are at rest on the table, your muscles switch off and can relax. Whereas if I'm here, I'm hunched. So I think the advice that I was taught, that I used to give, was rubbish. And actually, I encourage people now to push it further back. So, but I think getting comfortable, get a good chair. And I think the other thing is timers. The best and most important thing for that person to work at home would be an egg timer.
Yeah.
All right. Whack it on 20 minutes, go for a pee, make a cup of tea, get a glass of water, get moving, do 10 bends. You'll be better by the time you get back to your desk, because you've gone away from your desk. So your mind would have relaxed, refocused, and work. This is what I love about osteopathy. I'm at the desk. Yes, I've got paperwork to do, but I'm actually on the couch from patient. I reckon I'm more productive at my desk because I spend less time there.
Yeah.
So for me, I think keyboard, mouse, back, get your ergonomics set up. Don't listen to the rubbish that I used to spout, that I was taught, because it's crap. It doesn't make sense. And I've realized that now. And it took me 10 years to realize that, 15 years. And I think the most important thing is move.
Amazing. I think that wraps stuff up for today. I would like to say a huge thank you to the legend, James Ellis. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Of Active Healthcare. I'll see you again soon.